Module number 7, Propresenter and lyrics. I've been using Propresenter for close to 10 years now, and I've used Propresenter 3, 4, 5, 6, and now 7 has come out just recently, conveniently, with 2020 and all that took place there. There's a lot of features in Propresenter 7 that tied into our live stream conversation. But anyways, Propresenter is the standard, and that's why we're talking about it in this class. There's many softwares out there, but I'd strongly suggest that you use Propresenter for your worship setting. Understanding Propresenter, you need to understand layers and understand different types of layers. That's one of the advantages of this software, is being able to place multiple layers in multiple different forms and ways. Also remove those layers in a live setting. So layers is essential in understanding how to use this software. But understanding the basics, this software can be just about as complex and also just as simple as you want it to be. That's one of the main advantages to this software over many others that I've seen. You can get just as complicated and intricate in your design of your software lyrics, or you can just use the very simple standard stuff that comes with the software. It's all based on the time you have or how much you want to get into this. But whenever you're understanding how to use the software, it's important to pay attention as the operator during the rehearsal. So if you're the worship leader on stage, make sure that your team, your person that's running the lyrics, is paying attention during the rehearsal, during the pre-service time. And when you have them there, make sure to send them the songs ahead of time so that they can listen. So operators, make sure to listen to these songs ahead of time so you're aware of the direction the worship leader is going to go with the songs as much as possible. It's also important, I'm looking at my media computer right now with Propresenter, and I can see, I'm rolling on stage, but I can see just around the monitor. It's important for the operator to be able to see the worship leader and the team on stage, to follow their cues and follow things that are going on during the service. And I hate to say this is just a reality though. Out of all the positions in the tech booth, I think this is the most stressful position. And it's just because people may not notice a few tweaks or audio issues or even lighting issues, or especially the live stream or video, they don't notice that in a live setting. But when it comes to the lyrics, everyone notices when the lyrics are running behind or when the screen's messed up. People, it's the most obvious thing. It's the most obvious and really necessary thing for the congregation to sing along and be a part of the congregational worship time. So all that to say, it's a lot of pressure, but you matter greatly. As an operator with Propresenter, your position matters. You matter in that. This is just a screenshot of what Propresenter looks like. This is Propresenter 7. And if you're familiar with Propresenter, you'll see how different this looks. For a decade, Propresenter 3 to Propresenter 6 look very similar. Propresenter 7 looks very different. Now, it's got all of the same components and the same things that the software's always had. It's just in different locations and different positions. As you're looking at the software, you'll see in the bottom area with the color slides, those are the media background or foreground slides that you can cue into your file. And that whole screen there with the lyrics, that is the file, that is the song. To the top left, you'll see the library. The library is where you put together what I call your playlist. You put together your service, and now at the bottom left there, you'll see media. But there in the middle, you'll see the order of service. You'll see the songs, and you can see that they're clicked on this specific song. In the top right corner, you see the preview window. That's what the congregation sees, or Facebook Live sees, YouTube Live. And there are other media cues. You can hit stop and play on the video file. You see that red, it used to be a big X in the top left corner. And I always tell my operators to know where the clear all button is. Well, here in Propresenter 7, it's in the top right corner. And that's a very important thing to know in case something happens. It's good to just cut bait and start over again. If you're fishing, the term cut bait means, hey, this isn't working. Let's pick back up where we left off at. And sometimes that happens, and it's important to notice and be able to fix things quickly. People are pretty forgiving as long as you quickly move on and get back on track. So that's just a screenshot, a visual of what Propresenter 7 looks like. I highly recommend you spend time on your own, become familiarized. You can go online and download a demo, and it's fully functional demo. You can fully run it on your computer. It'll just have a watermark that won't allow you to use it in a live service without the watermark. But it's totally useful, totally easy to follow, and it gives you time. They have tons and tons of tutorial videos on YouTube and on their website on how to use the software. It's incredible. Hours upon hours of tutorials. This video is just a quick overview of how to use it all, and a very quick running basics. So the mouse or the keyboard, you can use either one of those to toggle back and forth between the slides or between the different songs. Next slide timing is very important. To be honest with you, this is something I did not understand for a long time as a worship leader until I was in a church where I noticed that we had a consistent issue of the slides being behind. And I'm just going, what is the deal? And I realized, and this is through a friend of mine, I was running slides for a service for him one time, and I realized as you finish the end of a phrase of the slide, as soon as you hit the last couple of words, it's important that you go ahead and click the next slide, because the congregation and the team looking at the confidence screen in the back, they are about to sing that word. They don't need that word anymore. You need to get the slide as quickly as possible to the next part. That's the most crucial. And again, like I said, clear all is incredibly important. The top right corner in Propresenter 7, Propresenter 6, 5, 4, 3, all at the top left. But you can clear each layer individually. They got different types of little X's that you can clear certain content, certain layers. These are some screenshots of some different different setups. Some pretty incredible text options. You can see the different formatting options there. But one thing that's consistent, and this has changed more and more over the years, variety of lyrics. You'll see here, actually all of them are all caps. I'm personally not a fan of all caps. It's a stylistic thing, but it's not necessarily something I'm against in my church where I lead worship each week. That's not, may or may not really work well. Again, this is all creative options that you have here. But another thing that's a common thing now is 2 lines per slide. As we'll talk about a little bit later, I'm a big fan of doing about 3 or 4 lines per slide if I can, which makes it easier on the person running Propresenter. But either way, you still get a picture of what these look like. These are obviously still images. They could also be moving images. There's a lot of great websites to pull content from in that. Setting up Propresenter basics. So we talked about running it. Now setting it up, you need to understand the difference between background and foregrounds. Now, being the person operating the software, it's not necessarily a requirement to understand the difference between these two. You just click the slides when you're supposed to click them. But if you're the person setting it up, you need to understand the difference between background and foreground. So background is exactly what it sounds like. It's in the background. So slides go over the lyrics. A foreground, so I'll go back to this slide real quick so you can see. The first slide in this image is a background. And so when they click that first video file, it's probably a moving cinematic scene mountainside, and the lyrics as they click the next slides will play overlaid on that background, and they can manually click through the different slides through the song. But if you had a foreground, if you didn't have the slide directly over that file, that video would stop playing because it was a foreground. So you have to make sure to have your background, and it sounds commonsensical, right? Have your background video be a background. But if it's a video to play for the congregation to see, a foreground is useful. So backgrounds and foregrounds are important to understand. There's a bunch of other details that tie into that, but understand backgrounds and foregrounds are different. Stage display. Setting up a stage display, there's a bunch of different ways to go about that as well. In its essence, it's important to have the slides on the back screen just like you do on the front screens. If your computer will allow you to run a separate video line to your back screen or TV, I highly recommend in Propresenter setting up a clock in the bottom right corner, bottom left corner, wherever you want it, where you can keep track of the time, both you and your pastor preaching and timelines and things. But also, it's good to have both the current slide and the upcoming slide. What I've done with my upcoming slide, that's in yellow. There's different settings you can do in Stage Display. You'll see that as you look at it. But help it be clear that you've got the next line coming up, just in case the person operating it is behind for a second and just needs some confidence of the next slide coming up. But Stage Display is incredibly, incredibly helpful. Highly recommend yourself becoming more familiar with it. Font and text size is a very important conversation in Propresenter. I highly recommend using a strong, bold font that's really easy to see over the background that you're using. And also a large text size so you can very clearly see that. You can also add an outline or a shadow to the text to make it even more clear of an image to see, of the text to see over that image. Timeline automation. This is an amazing feature in Propresenter that I have been using for a long, long time, especially for Christmas performances and cantatas and Easter and special choir performances. You can automate your lyrics to play an exact timing that you set it up as. And now I'm to the point that we use clicks and tracks for everything, and I use Propresenter as the main vehicle for that. But timeline is an incredible feature to get used to and utilize for your team and worship. Again, I spoke to this a little bit earlier. The number of lines on your screen is very, very important to decide what's going to work for your congregation. Here's an example of, look at this. In Propresenter 7, you can have multiple screens, multiple outputs. They've got two different screens here in this church. There's the screen that's got the current slide, and then they've got the screen off to the left with the different countdowns and the current time that they're working with. It's pretty incredible the amount of things you can do with your timeline. And you'll see the image up above it is their actual back screen. It's amazing. Propresenter 7 is so adaptable to so many setups in current worship settings. Okay, and then finally, kind of closing out here, the setup basics, finishing off with moving background or still background. I recommend if you pick a moving background that's not distracting, doesn't take away from people's attention in worship. Make sure it's very smooth. Make sure when it transitions back. That's again what a background video will do. Is sometimes 20 or 30 seconds long, and it'll automatically loop back to the beginning of that video in Propresenter. But if you set it as foreground, it won't repeat itself. It'll just stop when it's done. And so that's really important to notice. Still backgrounds are cheap, very easy to find, affordable, sometimes free in a lot of cases. But they're also not as distracting as moving backgrounds. So you just have to decide which song or which setting, and also the congregation that you're working with. Another perfect example, and this is not as much of an issue with Propresenter 7, but there is a webcam feature. There's a live streaming, like you can directly feed your camera shots into Propresenter to play on the big screen. I highly recommend you mute the webcam feature. Make sure that's not a thing, because I've seen some times where all of a sudden the person's staring at the screen, running the computer, all of a sudden's on the big screen, everybody's watching. I'm going, what's going on? So that's just a simple adjustment you want to have made. When you're setting up the slides, in the past I said, as long as all the words are in there, they can just follow me. Well, I'm telling you right now, after many, many Sundays of mistakes and me getting disorganized as a worship leader, sometimes you just lose your flow of thought and your music. And in my case, I don't even have music on stage anymore. I've started memorizing my music, and so I use automation and all that stuff. It's incredibly important to have the songs in order. And even with my automation, sometimes our operators, I say sometimes, it's rare, but it has happened that they messed up the automation and then they had to run it manually. And if I had it in a weird sequence and not in the sequence of the song, it can be hard. It can be very difficult for the operator to know where to go next. So make sure to have your slides, your order, your song lyrics in order. And then also, both as the worship leader but also as the tech operator, keep notes on each service rehearsal. Touch base with the worship leader after, worship leader touch base with the operator afterwards for any issues that you notice and things you need to fix going forward. But again, thank you as an operator. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for your contribution. And I know it's a stressful one, but I thank you for doing it. That's it.